What's going on, guys? My name is Orphan. How are you all? I know it's been a while, but today I have a video talking about Outriders, a game I had been looking forward to for a little bit, and it has been out for a little over 2 weeks now. So I thought that was plenty of time to be able to play the game, kind of dive into all the mechanics and systems, and just see as a looter what the game had to offer and be able to properly cover it and convey all of my thoughts on it. So that is what we are here to do today. I'm going to start off with saying that I have over 100 hours played now. I know life the game, but I did it for you guys. So I have over 100 hours on it. I played the Pyromancer class mainly, and I have dabbled a little bit with the Devastator and the Trickster of just a very tiny amount. So all of this is going to be based on my experience with the Pyromancer primarily. So the core game as a whole, I do enjoy. The shooting mechanics, the fact that it's third person, you got abilities that each class can use, they have skill trees, it's a loot based game, so you deal with weapon drops and rarities, and you're fighting mini boss type enemies with ads, and just all of that stuff as a whole I enjoy greatly. It has similarities to Diablo. That's where the devs took most of their inspiration from. In an interview, they explained how they didn't really take inspiration from the other looter shooters that were on the market, and I think that was a very good idea because a lot of those are still figuring it out, basically. So that wouldn't be a good source to draw from in the first place. So, and I love Diablo. I'm a big fan of Diablo, so it's good that that was where they had their basis to work from. In this game, so far, from the 100 hours I've played, the leveling experience was enjoyable. There was a consistent loot stream. You always got gear, in a game that's about gear. Constantly getting new gear to play with and just to refine your builds. It makes the experience that much more enjoyable because you always feel impactful. You always feel like you're getting something new. There wasn't much downtime. You were constantly getting new things and you're able to customize them in all these different ways. So it felt good to be playing the game at any point, whether it was the early game, as you're getting a couple levels in, or even in the late game. There was always something to look for when it comes to the gear. The world tiers worked out really well. I pretty much played at the highest world tier possible as I was playing through the story mode, so it made for a good challenge. It took me a little longer to get through it than if you were just blitzing it, but it made the rewards that much better. So there was a real incentive to play on the higher world tiers if you're trying to push towards the end game as fast as possible and, be as strong as possible on the way. There was no real useless gear. Everything you found, like I said earlier, was useful. You had a use for it. Even, green and blue items. Because of the way the mod system and the crafting system works in this game. It makes everything potentially have a use. So you're not just dismantling everything you see. You're kind of checking it out first. You're inspecting it and you're seeing if it can be useful for the current build that you're running. The endgame runs resemble greater rifts from Diablo, and that's both a good and bad thing. There are big differences, but that's kind of the idea of them, is that you have these runs you go through, they're time-based, and the faster you complete them, the better rewards you get. So it really incentivizes you to have a well put together build that is focused and it can do damage and it can get through these expeditions ideally as fast as possible so you can get the best rewards. Obviously you still get rewards from getting lower time completions, but they're not as good as if you get the target times for the gold, and that's going to be ideal. Again, that's why you're playing the game, to put together a build so you can tackle these expeditions and really push to see how high you can get those damage numbers, how well you can add clear, so on and so forth. So that's what the expeditions are there for, as the end game activity. Now, the things I enjoy about this game specifically, I'm going to start off with the mod system. It keeps you feeling in control of your character's progression at all times. You can switch builds on the fly, instantly, like right away, with all the gear that you have. Because of the way the mod system works, to a degree, you can just drop all of the perks you're running, swap them out for different abilities that affect, an entire different set of abilities. Go in, reset your skill tree for no cost, and you can just play a different way right away. You don't have to go out and find all new pieces of gear to make it work, or to at least just try it and see what it's gonna be like. So I really appreciated that, because there was certain points when I was leveling where I hit kind of a brick wall, and then I would swap some pieces around, swap some skills out, change some skill tree nodes, and it felt a lot better. Like I was able to deal with the situation a lot more effectively. And again, this is at all points through the game. So even as you're leveling, once you reach the end game, there's a lot of customizability here. Some things are better than others, but we'll get to that. But you do have the option, which is the most important thing. You can make use of all the different weapon types, like shotguns, SMGs, assault rifles. Every class can make use of that stuff, and you're obviously going to get better performance on some of the weapons with certain classes, but you can use everything. There's customizability within the weapons to offer different variants, so you can change things like rate of fire, damage, reload speed. Just, you can get that perfect weapon setup for how you enjoy playing the game, which again is very good considering you don't have to necessarily wait for drops. Once you get an assault rifle, you can immediately start putting all the mods you want on it, changing the variant, making sure it's the rarity you want, and you get to keep enjoying the game, at your own pace. The class abilities and the synergy seems to be really well thought out. Allows for more, like I said, focused and refined builds. So the abilities that all the classes have work really well together. There are gear sets that are legendary that kind of dictate a build or a specific skill rotation, and you get to play around with that stuff. I'm Pyromancer. I've played around with so many different variations of skill setups with the same gear set. So I never changed the gear set out. I just changed a bunch of mods and the skills combinations, and they play completely different. They offer different things. So each class, all 4 classes, are able to do that. So again, they're giving you so much for the time investment. You're gonna have plenty to do with the time you spend with the game, and the classes are really fleshed out. I enjoyed them a lot. Like I said, I played Pyro. I played them all in the demo, but Pyro mainly, and that's 100 hours. So just imagine picking up another character and going through the same, rotations, and it's a lot here for you if you enjoy that customizability from a character standpoint. Another plus was that most of the combat encounters were quick and to the point. You have this group of enemies that you want to kill. They have usually a boss associated with them, a big tougher elite enemy, and you get to it. There's not a lot of running around looking for the enemies, like MMOs or open world games. It's all centralized, it's focused, so you're always in action, you're always doing something, which again is important for a game where you're investing a lot of your time into the way your character plays and behaves. You want to be able to put that on display as much as possible, so the combat encounters do lend themselves to that. Now we're going to move on to the things that I dislike about the game. Things that I actively were, conscious of as I was playing, or when I stopped playing, I'd go back to think about them and just how I wish they didn't necessarily work that way. So this is going to be that section of the video. And the first thing is going to be the loading screens connecting damn near every zone. Like, you can't really do much in this game without seeing a loading screen. To my understanding, it's the way they designed the game, because it was a co-op online game. Be that as it may, if it makes it so you can have a better experience playing with people, then I guess, but just on its own, it is not good. You don't want to go through that many loading screens. You don't want to have to see a fucking loading screen to jump over a gap. Like, it's ridiculous, but here we are. The second thing is vendors kind of felt useless. Again, I was playing on the highest world tier I could as I was going through the story, so gear was plentiful. So I never really felt a reason to go back to the vendors that often. Like, you could pop your head in, see what kind of pieces they had. Maybe they had a perk you were looking for. Maybe they had the rolls you wanted, but it was so few and far between from the actual stream of loot you were getting through natural progression. So I just didn't really care about the vendors. There's a couple like end game that actually have some exciting stuff when you first get there, but even then they start to kind of feel obsolete. Like once you've got your build going and you're pushing expeditions and you're getting loot drops, they're not refreshing enough. So maybe they can put a better timer system in and rotate the items more effectively, or just come up with a different currency system and make it so vendors have more of an impact. But for now, they're not that special. Next would be the kind of interactions between world tiers and the challenge tier level. So once you get to the end game and you start to push expeditions, you push what is known as challenge tiers, and that's how you expand the level cap of your gear, making it so you can have more armor, so you can do more damage, etc. Those two systems don't interact. So once you've gotten past a certain point in challenge tiers, there's almost no reason to ever go back to the base game and do any content under the world tiers, even if you push the max one, because the gear will be inferior. Like, yes, you could take a lower level piece of gear and level it up, but you could also just run an expedition that has a higher gear drop and you just get it that way, considering you'd probably be able to push through it with relative ease in the first place. It doesn't seem like there's a reason to return to the world tier mechanics once you've hit expeditions, so it just kind of makes them useless after a little while. Maybe they can find some way to make those two work a little better, maybe offer some exclusive legendaries that are found on the world tiers. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of things they could do, but for now it's something that stood out as like, yeah, this doesn't really make a lot of sense once you reach the end game. And the final biggest thing that I dislike about this game, and it's with a passion, is that it is always online. Now, for the type of game this is, it shouldn't be always online, but it is. So again, it goes back to the way that they designed it with that co-op focus and the integrated zones and, you know, the little hub zone. I guess being online played a part in that. I don't know what ideas they had, but what I can say is I don't like it at all. I wish it was not always online. I wish there was an option to play solo offline, mainly because when the game first came out, there was massive server issues and you were lucky if you could stay connected for more than a few hours. Hell, if you could even sign in the first place. And that goes to show why a game being always online is a gamble, because if anything happens server side, you can't play. If anything happens with your internet connection, you can't play. It's not good. It is not good, and it really, really soured the experience for me when the game first was released. Also, there's a lot of game-breaking bugs, unfortunately, like inventory wipes, people losing all of their items. They are currently working on a fix as of this video, and I believe they are close to getting it and restoring the items of the loss, but it's nuts how many problems this game launched with, and a lot of them were big, you know, progression blocking bugs, the game frequently crashing, just the whole lot. So I'm really hoping a lot of these things will eventually come with fixes or, you know, new systems to kind of remedy them. We'll see. The game's only been out for 2 weeks, so there's a lot of time for that stuff to happen, but as of right now, those are the things that I just do not like about the game. Now, we're on to the final section, and this is the things that I believe desperately need to be worked on. Like, it is imperative that the moment they start fixing the core issues that are plaguing the game right now, they need to move on to and start to work on these things that I'm going to talk about. Gear rolls on legendaries. They need to have random attributes to fuel the chase, the desire to acquire them. So as it currently stands, legendary items roll with fixed attributes. Attributes on an item are like bonus firepower, cooldown reduction, status power, this and that. They're fixed, so that means every time you get that piece of gear, it's gonna have those attributes. Every single time. The reason that needs to be randomized is because it incentivizes you to chase a specific piece of gear more and more, because you get closer and closer to the perfect rolls for the playstyle that you're going for. If you know for sure a gear is never going to have the stats you want, you would never use it. Once you've gotten the perks off of it through the crafting system, you would never want that piece of gear unless you're doing a completely different build. What the randomization does is it makes it so if you farm enough, that piece of gear could work with a lot of different builds instead of being for one specific one. Again, taking inspiration from Diablo, that's how Diablo works. All gear rolls with random attributes. Now there's a little bit of, fine tuning you can do with controlling the randomness somewhat, like re-rolling attributes, which again, you cannot do here, at least yet. Once they're on there, they're on there. You can't change them. And I believe that needs to be changed. If the game wants to keep longevity, you're gonna have to make it so that those rolls are random. I think that's a big one. That's like really high on the list. The second thing is gonna be legendary drop rate balance. Now, as of this recording, with the 100 hours I put in, I've gotten quite a few legendaries. But I've played 100 hours. When I was leveling, I got like 2 legendaries. And again, I was pushing the highest world tier at the time, which further increases your chance for legendaries. And the first legendary came when I was towards the end of the game. So during that whole leveling journey, I didn't see a legendary drop at all, even though I was keeping up with the max world tier. That's not good, because even in the game they're taking inspiration from, you can just see a legendary drop as early as like fucking level 10 or something. Right? Like, even in Borderlands, legendaries can drop at any time. You can get level 1 legendaries. And I think that randomness factor adds to that loot experience of like, oh shit, what's this? Or, oh shit, I know to look out for this gun later at a higher level. But this seems very stingy with the drops. Like, they just didn't want you to have these drops until a specific point. And I don't like that for a loot game. Again, if we're speaking for longevity, those things need to be more spread out. Like, they need to be more readily available, especially if you're pushing the higher content that is designed to give you the best chance at legendaries. Even challenge tiers, where that's where your highest chance is. The highest challenge tier gives you a 25% chance for a legendary item over 4 drops. So each drop has a 25% chance to be a legendary. And that's the highest challenge tier you can do. So if you push the hardest content in the game, of those 4 drops, each one has a 1 in 4 chance to be a legendary. Now what that means is you could potentially get no legendaries. And I've had that happen to me before. Pushing a challenge tier 15 expedition and getting no legendary drop for it. That just feels fucking bad. Like, it feels really bad. Especially when you're at the end of your builds and you've seen most of the legendaries you want, so now you're trying to get specific ones to refine the build. You're gonna do a lot of sifting. You're gonna be getting stuff you've already gotten, which is par for the course in loot-based games, but it hurts even more when you're not getting any at all. So I can't sift through nothing, you know what I'm saying? They need to kind of do something with the drop rate and how often they give you legendaries and how spread out they are. I just think if you're gonna take inspiration from Diablo, you kind of gotta do it the whole way. Another one is mod rebalancing. Some of the mods in this game are completely redundant. I'm gonna give you a perfect example. There is a mod that makes it so critical shots do not consume ammo, and it's a tier 2 mod. There are 3 tiers of mods in the game. It's a tier 2. There is also a tier 2 mod that makes it so critical shots on burning enemies don't consume ammo. Why the fuck would you ever run that if you could just run the one where crits don't consume ammo? You don't have to be under the parameters of them burning. They're both tier 2 mods, so why would you ever run the conditional one? It doesn't make sense. And there's a handful of examples of the mod system working like that, where another mod does the same thing, but you have to do more for the effect. It doesn't make sense. There's examples of some lower tier mods just being way more impactful than even the tier 3 ones, which you can only get on legendaries. Just the mod balancing in this game needs to be looked at ASAP, because it's kind of atrocious. It's almost atrocious. There's a lot of good that's coming out of it as well, and it is one of the better systems I've seen in a loot game, but my god, it needs some attention. Another one I believe they need to pay some attention to is the build diversity. Now, I know earlier in the video I praised it and how much control you have over builds. That's when you don't take into account trying to push the hardest content in the game and as fast as possible. Surely you're going to start to funnel into specific builds that get the job done, and most playstyles are going to gravitate towards that. So if the other builds aren't performing anywhere near what one specific one can do, most people are not going to run the other ones. There needs to be an incentive to use other builds. In this case, abilities need to scale harder. The set bonuses honestly need to be given a look again and redid. They need to change some of the set bonuses. Some of them could just use number increases. Some of them need to be changed flat out as a whole. Like, these are some of the most sought after gear pieces at the end game, and they're lackluster. You can't have that in a loot game like this again when we're speaking on longevity. You need a reason to chase gear, and if that gear is uninteresting or it just will not help you, no one's going to want to chase it. So I think they really need to look at build diversity and kind of understand what makes playing an ability class fun, what makes playing a gun class fun, and go in and change some of those sets, you know, maybe add new ones, and just get their scaling down, because it's kind of lopsided right now. I mean, more people have been coming out with better build options for a lot of the classes, but some of them still just reign king by far. And that could be remedied with, like I said, better scaling and changing of the set bonuses. Make them more interesting. Now, the final thing, and I touched on the legendary armor set changes, that falls in line with the build diversity and the rebalance of that. The final thing is going to be scaling aimed at solo play. Now, I am a solo player. Of that 100 hours spent, I probably played 90 of the hours solo. These kind of games I enjoy playing by myself because I enjoy the challenge. I'm not really waiting on anyone else. I get to go at my own pace, and I have a lot of experience playing these games with, you know, the tough end games and shit as a solo player. So I personally do believe the solo scaling in this game it's ridiculous. Like, it's way too harsh. A lot of the time you'll find yourself getting 1 and 2 shot by a lot of the enemies in the game, and this game throws a crazy amount of enemies at you, and at any given point, any one of those enemies has the potential to just like insta-gib you. It's not fun. Now, I'm not saying make it so you take no damage. That's not what I'm saying. But there needs to be some balancing done to like some of the enemy types, namely the monster enemies who can just gang up on you and fucking just juggle you, and you don't have any real chances to get out because you're gonna get hit with like 1 or 2 things and you're gonna die. So I think they definitely need to look at that and look at, you know, how fast are players dying, how much of a real chance do they have at survivability, that kind of stuff. Because yes, there are armor stats in the game, and the higher your armor, the more chance to survive, but I've even had up to 80% damage reduction, and it just doesn't fucking matter. Like, you still get 2 taps. So I don't know what they could do as far as that, but I do think for solo play specifically, it needs to be rebalanced. In closing, I've thoroughly enjoyed the game. You know, it was for the most part exactly what I was hoping it would be from the moment I found out about it. I believe it could be so much more. Like, they can do so much with this. The groundwork is fantastic. You know, taking inspiration from Diablo was the right move, and they should be commended for what they've done so far, but the work is not done. You know, show us that you care about the game. Show us you've learned from the history of looter games and the looter shooter genre as a whole. Be that exception. Be special. Be more. I thank you guys so much for watching. This is a longer one. I make these kind of videos when I'm really passionate about the subject material because I like to go over them thoroughly, talk about exactly where my grievances lie and how I genuinely believe they could be approached. So this is one of those kind of videos. Once again, thank you for watching. Have you been playing Outriders? Have you been enjoying it? If so, be sure to leave comments, let me know what you think. You guys have a good one, and until next time.